of DELT student engagement webinars. My name is Cash Clifton. I am one of the DELT master teachers. DELT stands for Distance Education and Learning Technology. We are a team who is attempting to expand and support the use of distance education and technology throughout the state of New Mexico. We have a lot of different things that we can offer you in terms of resources and support. So I just want to direct you to some places you can find resources. nmdelt.org is our website. That's an excellent place to start. You can also like us on Facebook. Today's topic is going to be social media. And so that's one idea of a place where you can connect with other professionals through Facebook, and that's on the NMDELT Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter. Similarly, today we're going to be talking about how can you connect with professional networks on Twitter, and NMDELT is just one example of how you can do that. On our social media, as we discover new resources, as we hear of conferences, just as we're aware of things going on around the state, we will be sharing that through the DELT social media. So I highly encourage you to follow us if you are so inclined, if you think those will benefit you. So today I'm talking about social media, not just in distance learning, but I'm also talking in the traditional classroom. So if you haven't joined us before for the student engagement webinars, what I always try to stress is as you transition to distance learning, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're not trying to throw everything out and start over fresh. You're trying to take what works well in your traditional classroom and figure out how can I make this work well through technology? How can I make this work well in a distance learning format? And hopefully the NMDELT team can support you and provide you some ideas in terms of how you can do that. So let's go ahead and get started. So technology is here to stay. I don't know if that's necessarily a fact. That's very strongly my opinion. I think technology is becoming more and more integrated into our society. And I think as educators, we have a choice to make individually. Are you going to fight technology or are you going to embrace technology? And my first talking point is about what issues does technology cause in the classroom. I initially was very, very resistant to technology in the classroom. I thought it was going to be a big distraction. I found myself engaging in a power struggle with my students over cell phones, as I think many of you most likely do. What was happening is I would be standing up there lecturing. I had my best lecture prepared. I was all set to go. And I'd look out and I'd see 2 or 3 students playing on their cell phones, which was very distressing to me because I thought, well, if they're playing on their cell phones, they're not paying attention. They're not listening. I would tell them to put their cell phones away. Sometimes they would comply. Sometimes they would resist and fight back with me. And so I found that a couple of things were happening. Number one, I was getting thrown off on my lesson because when I stop to have to deal with a classroom management issue like that, it's kind of difficult to pick right back up with where I was speaking. But the other thing is I was just genuinely concerned about, are these students paying attention? And I found that I was losing class time to have these battles over technology. And so an administrator that I work with brought up the idea, well, if that's not working, what else could you do? And so I just want to talk about what are some things that technology creates in terms of problems in the classroom and how can we address that? So my very first talking point here, what issues does technology cause in the classroom? Technology can compete for attention. I think we live in a society now where we're used to constant stimulation. We're used to things that are constantly vying for our attention. You log onto a website and there's all kinds of fun advertisements flashing. You know, it may be something silly like see the worst celebrity plastic surgery, or it may be something that sounds really interesting. Sometimes you'll see things on websites flashing about, oh, learn good study skills, you know, things that legitimately sound like they could be interesting. And so as teachers, we're dealing in this world with technology now where it really is a competition. Our students are used to this constant flash for their attention. Something has to be flashy to get their attention. And as teachers, we're not always flashy in the classroom. We don't always entertain. And I don't believe that's our purpose for being there. We're there to teach, not to entertain. But just keeping in mind, students are used to people and things and websites competing for their attention. and they don't get that so much in the classroom. So that can be a little bit of an issue for students, particularly younger students, although this can affect people at any age. Keep in mind your younger students, they may have only existed in a world with technology. I'm broadcasting from UNM today, and I teach freshman level classes, and the majority of my students are 18 years old. Those students, if they're 18 now, they would have been born in 1997. Just stop to think of where technology was in 1997, and then stop to think, this is the world the students have only known. They've never known a world without computers necessarily. They may have never known a world without cell phones. They have never known a world without internet. And just understand, sometimes you are competing for their attention with the technology. Cheating and academic dishonesty can arise related to technology. I've seen some really interesting ads for apps that can solve any math problem. That essentially what you can do, you download this free app to your phone, you take a picture of whatever problem you're trying to solve, and the app almost instantaneously can tell the student what the answer is, and then it can go beyond that and show them how to work the problem. Is this used ethically by some students? I certainly think it is. I think it's used unethically by a lot of students, though. And so just be aware that academic dishonesty issues can become even more difficult to control as you enter into this world with technology. As I was referencing before, there can be this battle between the student and teacher over technology. One thing I've found that works really nicely in my face-to-face classes, if I have a student that won't get off their cell phone, is I start using them as sort of my encyclopedia. So if I have a student that won't get off their cell phone, I say, hey, so-and-so, will you Google this for me? Hey, look this up for the class and explain it to them. Essentially what I'm doing there is I'm putting the focus on them, I'm putting them on the spot, and one of two things will happen. Typically the student will put their phone away because they don't want to be on the spot. But other times what will happen is they like that role and they start contributing to the class, and there's some potential to get their buy-in. So there's just one idea for a strategy for dealing with that battle in the classroom. And then there's this idea of disrespecting the teacher with technology. I do feel disrespected sometimes when a student won't put down their phone. Today we're going to start talking about, is there another way you can approach this? Isn't there another way that you can think about this? And I wanted to ask, can you think of any other issues technology causes in the classroom? Jamie, do we have anybody interacting with us in the chat box this afternoon?
We do not have any active participants. We do have one viewer, but nobody with the chat.
Okay, fantastic. So I will skip beyond that talking point. If you're watching this, you may be able to think of other issues that technology can create in the classroom. This is by no means a complete list. So I am entering today's webinar in the context of let's embrace technology rather than fight it. Whether or not you want to embrace it or fight it, I think that's a personal decision for you to make as a teacher within your own philosophy of teaching, within your own ethics. But today we are going to approach with the idea that we're going to work with technology. So today I'm looking at how can you integrate social media into your classroom, be that a traditional face-to-face classroom or be that a distance learning classroom. And so the very first thing I want to start with is a discussion of what social media is. So today I'm going to be showing a series of YouTube videos. They're the In Plain English videos. It essentially, it's a YouTube channel that describes various concepts related to technology in very simple English, very easy to understand terms. So I'm going to go ahead and play our video. This is Social Media in Plain English.
I'm sure you've heard the buzz. Social media may be the next big thing. What's it all about? This is Social Media in Plain English. Let's take a visit to Scoopville, a town that's famous for ice cream. For over 20 years, Big Ice Cream Company has been making high-quality ice cream with a big factory in town. A few years back, the company did focus groups and found out that they could maximize profits by offering 3 flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. The residents of the town were content. They never thought it could be different. Then something happened in Scoopville. a new invention came to town. Suddenly, everyone can make their own ice cream for only a few dollars. This changed everything. The Smiths decided to make pineapple ice cream. The Joneses made ice cream with pecans. Soon, every kind of ice cream imaginable was being made by Scoopville's residents at very little cost. Of course, some ice cream was more popular than others, and that was okay. Sylvia's pickle ice cream had a very small but loyal following. That was fine. She only needed enough income to buy ingredients for her next batch. Jarrett's red velvet ice cream became so famous, he created his own store. Over time, people started to think differently about ice cream. It didn't always come from a factory. It also came from friends and neighbors. It became something to share, something to bring people together, something to celebrate. Big ice cream companies still made the best vanilla around, and to their surprise, demand even grew. But it was the unique, original, and authentic flavors made by the residents that brought people to Scoopville. When they arrived, however, there seemed to be a problem. There were too many flavors. Visitors felt overwhelmed. They needed ways to find the new, the popular, the flavors that were interesting to them. Franklin had an idea for his ice cream. Outside his house, he erected a board and invited his customers to share their thoughts on his ice cream. They could use words to describe it, stars to rate it, and leave messages for others. People loved it. At a glance, visitors could tell what his ice cream was all about and learn from people like them. Over time, each resident had their own board. Sylvia's board showed that her pickle ice cream didn't please everyone, but was very unique and interesting. Jarrett's board overflowed with positive reviews and ratings. Soon, a few things became clear. First, their ice cream got better because they could learn directly from customers. Second, free customer reviews were more valuable than costly advertising. And third, the boards created a way for customers to find exactly what they wanted. The combination of new technology and new ways to work with customers helped the residents feel like a unique community. So, this is social ice cream, by the people, for the people. It turns out that ice cream and social media have a lot in common. Today, everyone has a chance to make their own flavors, thanks to free tools like blogs, podcasts, and video sharing. Plus, we now have new ways for real people to play a role in providing feedback, organization, and promotion. Whether you're a big, established company, an individual with loyal fans, or simply someone with ideas and opinions, social media means new opportunities to create and communicate with people that care. New tools are arriving in cities and towns around the world. When this change comes to your neighborhood, the choice is yours. What flavors will you make? I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Social Media in Plain English on The Common Craft Show. One more thing. The Common Craft store now offers downloadable versions of our videos for use in the workplace. Find them at commoncraft.com/store.
All right, so that's our overview of social media. Social media is a very generalized term. You may be more familiar with things such as Facebook, Twitter, those kind of things. Those are all types of social media. Social media is really just a way for people to connect. It's a way for people to communicate. And social media is one of those things that's being used pretty frequently in education. I'm seeing it more and more in education. My direct experience with social media is that students really like it. I know one issue that I run into with students is that if I need to communicate with them via email, they don't check their email very frequently. So I can send out, these really well worded reminders of, hey, don't forget, this is your goal for the end of the week. And no matter how well I write those things, I'm not doing any good if the students don't actually read it. So social media can be a way to send out that kind of information in a way that the students are actually going to get it. So my idea here is, Facebook, Twitter, these kinds of things, students are already enrolled in those. Where a student may only check their email once a month, they're probably on their Facebook or their Twitter several times a day. So as a teacher, how can I play into that Facebook or Twitter? How can I play into what students are already doing to hopefully make my class a bigger piece of their life, hopefully open up better communication with my students through that process.
I'm sure you've heard the buzz.
Oops, excuse me, I did not mean to play that. Let's go to the next slide. So let's look at integrating social media into distance learning. So one caution I want to give you, you want to be sure to check your individual program or college's policies and procedures. From what I understand, there are some colleges and programs out there that explicitly forbid the use of social media in the classroom. So definitely be careful that you don't violate anything like that. Some instructors use it for course announcements and communication. So here's where you want to be careful in that social media is not going to be a secure email server like you may have within your program or college. It's not going to be the secure email server like we have in Plato. So I would discourage the use of social media for private messages, but it could be very good for making overall announcements to the entire class. Social media is often actually used for class projects. There's a lot of different ways to do that. As we go through today's webinar, I'm going to give you some links to resources that will show you how other people are using social media in education, and hopefully you can get some ideas for how you could integrate it and use it for some class projects. One big thing that I'm seeing done with social media is using it as an opportunity to teach an online reputation. I don't think that our students always understand that what you do on the internet can have implications later in terms of a career. A lot of companies now, they're checking social media. They're doing a Google search on potential applicants. And so I think this is the chance to tell our students, hey, if you're putting all of these very provocative pictures on social media, that could come back to be a problem. And just teaching them, you have to be a professional in this realm as well. You really need to be careful what you put out there. You can integrate it into a variety of media formats, which is really nice. There's a whole lot you can do with social media. I think Delta is going to have some more trainings coming up in the spring related to Google Tools. Google Tools can be integrated into social media. There's Prezis that can be integrated. Microsoft Office-based things can be integrated into social media. There's a lot that you can do. And you can also do a lot of learning styles. One thing I hear with distance learning is fear that's just going to be the student reads the book and then they take the test, and then they read another chapter and then they take the test. And that's not what you want. You still want to have connection with your students. You still want to engage the variety of learning styles, and this can be a way to bring in videos. It can be a way to bring in those auditory sensations. It can even be a way to bring in some hands-on approaches, and we'll see some examples of that here a little bit later. If you do integrate social media into distance learning, one caution I want to give you is be sure that you clearly distinguish between conversation and formal writing spaces. Your students are probably used to very informal ways of typing and communicating on social media, sort of the shorthand, the abbreviations, like LOL stands for laugh out loud. You want to very clearly let your students know what are your expectations. Can they treat your course's Facebook page like they would any other Facebook page, or do you expect them to use proper punctuation and grammar? I do like my students to use proper punctuation and grammar in my course social media pages. I just think that's something that they need to be in the habit of practicing. You want to be careful with privacy and legal issues in social media. So again, talking with students about the online identity in terms of what you put out there is available. Just be aware if you're integrating students into social media and social media is something that you use privately, you may have some crossover between your private life on social media and your professional life on social media. So just understand, if you're speaking with your students about their online identity, being careful what they put out there, you as a teacher need to be very careful about what you're putting out there on social media and what parts of your private social media do students have access to. Definitely keep that in mind. I suggest having separate social media accounts. So for example, if you're going to do Facebook in your classroom, I would suggest having your personal Facebook, that's for your family and friends, and then have your professional Facebook. Keep those accounts separate. Make the professional Facebook where your students can interact with you. Because your students don't necessarily need to see a picture of you and your dog on vacation. They may want to, but I don't think they need to. I also don't think you as a teacher necessarily want your students knowing everything you share on social media. Definitely want to think in terms of ethics when you consider social media. You don't want to overcomplicate the class. I've seen distance learning classes before where the teacher is engaging all different kinds of social media, all different kinds of fancy medias for projects, and you can really overwhelm your students. You want to always keep in mind that as a teacher, your focus needs to be primarily on the content. It doesn't need to be about wowing your students with flash and glamour and fancy projects. You don't need to be trying to impress your students with your technical abilities. You need to be teaching them the content. You need to understand you may be excluding learners who are not familiar with or lack access to the technology. And the idea of access to technology, that's a big issue throughout the state of New Mexico. Because I do realize we have some more rural parts that don't necessarily have access to internet, or if they do have access to internet, it's very, very slow. We're also gonna have students that don't have a smartphone. They don't necessarily have tablets. They don't necessarily have access to a computer. So be sure you're not assuming that every single one of your students has access to state-of-the-art technology. What I suggest is if you make social media a part of your class, I suggest that you make it optional. And then any sort of course announcements that you make through social media, make sure those announcements are available elsewhere, whether you send that to your students through email or whether you have some sort of learning management system, be that through Learn or Google Classroom where you post it. And if your program doesn't offer some sort of learning management system, please be aware that in the state of New Mexico, you can access Google Classroom through the New Mexico DELT project. You would just need to visit our website, nmdelt.org, to request access to Google Classroom. That can be a very, very useful tool for teachers. Student privacy is a big concern on social media. Maybe your students aren't already on social media. You don't want them to feel pressured to get onto social media just for your class. You also want to keep in mind there are different privacy settings within social media. You may have students that use social media for a very narrow purpose. Maybe they have very careful privacy settings and they don't like to share a lot. This could make them uncomfortable. And there again, this is where I suggest making the social media portion optional. Because some of the students will run with social media and they will like it, and this can be beneficial for some students, but it won't be helpful for all. Academic integrity can be an issue on social media. For example, if you're creating a Facebook group, you're giving your students a way to communicate with each other via methods that you don't necessarily have control over. So as your students start seeing each other on your social media page, they may start doing some private messaging in terms of, are they going to be ethical in terms of academic integrity with the private messaging? You never know. And that's not something you have control over as a teacher. So just be aware that those issues could come into play. You also may run into issues where students start drama on social media and they may want you as a teacher to enter into their drama. Be very, very careful that you do not, unless it's something that directly pertains to the class. Copyright laws are a big issue. Keep in mind the concept of copyright laws, but also keep in mind the concept of intellectual property. There's a lot of things you can use from the web, but you can only use them if you cite your original source. Be careful you don't violate that. Also, be careful that you are not using copyrighted materials that are not allowed to be reproduced. FERPA and privacy issues, keep in mind the concept of directory information versus identifying information. Essentially, if you're requiring all of your students to be part of your social media page, in essence, what you're essentially doing is creating a class list. Depending on how you set up your social media account, that could be something relatively public, so you want to be very, very careful. I would suggest working with your individual program directors to ensure you're going to do this in a way that you don't violate any policies within your individual program. So those are all my concerns of social media, and I do want to proceed cautiously with it. But let's talk about why consider social media, because it can be a very, very good thing for your students. I've had students tell me before that they take a class and there's a feeling like there's no teacher in the class. It's just them interacting with the system. So here in the state of New Mexico, As an ABE teacher, you would have access to all of the Plato content that we have through InDelt. You don't want it to feel like it's just the student and Plato. You want the student to feel like, no, there's a real life person behind the scenes. There's a real life person that I can interact with. And social media can be a really nice way to do that. It's essentially can be a way to humanize yourself. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of students are using social media already. As you send messages, they may get your messages about deadlines, assignments, that kind of thing, much quicker through social media than they would through other communication methods. It encourages students to socialize. And what I was saying a little bit ago about students can create this online community that they may use dishonestly, but they also may create an online community that can be a very positive thing. Maybe they'll form study groups that they'll use ethically. Maybe they'll make friends in the class. And if they get stuck on a question, they may be comfortable asking their friend the question, whereas they're not so comfortable asking you. So social media can be a really good thing. It gives them a place to communicate that they're struggling in the class, may let them know, hey, I'm not alone in struggling with this material. And so keeping in mind, the engagement student to student, that can be a very useful thing. You're teaching basic social media skills for the job market of the future. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of jobs are searching people in their social media accounts prior to hiring them, but there's a lot of companies that are using social media. I work for C&M and UNM. They both have a very strong social media presence. And so going into the job market, there may be expectations that your students will interact with the company's social media. Maybe your students will be required to contribute to their future employer's social media. And so you're essentially helping them in job market readiness by letting them go into the door saying, no, I do have an understanding of social media. I do have an understanding of what's professional on social media. I do have an understanding of my online identity. And this is also a way to include people with special needs or illnesses that may feel maybe marginalized in the classroom. They might go to your traditional classroom, kind of sit in the back, maybe not be noticed, maybe not interact with people. Social media can kind of level the playing field. If there's developmental delays, maybe it would give the student the opportunity to really think about what they want to say and have the opportunity to edit what they want to say before they send it. Maybe that can make your student feel more confident, more willing to engage meaningfully in your classroom. So social networking sites, I wanted to look what social networking sites are. So here again, I have one of the in plain English videos. And this is off of YouTube. So here is social networking in plain English.
Networks get things done. Whether it's sending a letter or lighting your home, networks make it happen. To get from Chicago to Santa Fe, we need to see the network of roads that will get us there. We see that Chicago is connected to St. Louis, which is connected to Dallas, which is connected to Santa Fe. Of course, people networks can help us with finding jobs, meeting new friends, and finding partners. You know how it works. Bob is your friend, and he knows Sally, and Sally's friend Joe has a job for you. This is a network of people, a social network. Yay! The problem with social networks in the real world is that most of the connections between people are hidden. Your network may have huge potential, but it's only as valuable as the people and the connections that you can see. Ooh! This problem is being solved by a type of website called a social networking site. These websites help you see connections that are hidden in the real world. Here's how it works. You sign up for a free account and fill out your profile. Then you look for people you know. When you find someone, you click a button that says Add as Friend. Once you do this, you and that person have a connection on the website that others can see. They are a member of your network, and you are a member of theirs. What's really cool is that you can see who your friends know and who your friends' friends know. You're no longer a stranger, so you can contact them more easily. This solves a real-world problem because your network has hidden opportunities. Social networking sites make these connections between people visible. Like a map for a highway, they show you the people network that can help you get to your next destination, whether it's a job, a new partner, or a great place to live. Your network is suddenly more useful. You can get started at these sites: LinkedIn, Facebook, and MySpace. I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Social Networking in Plain English on the Common Craft Show.
So social networking is really about connecting with people, connecting with the people you know, the people they know, the people they know. There's really no limit to how many people you can connect with through social media. That's why you get people who have sometimes thousands and thousands of friends on social media. I use the term friend loosely here because that's the term most social media sites use. Probably not directly friends with 1,000 people. So I have a couple of resources here. I'm going to look at this one. This is Facebook and Education. So let me go ahead and click on that. And Jamie, can you see my browser now?
Yes, I can.
All right, fantastic. It looks like I stressed out my computer. By clicking on that link, I had it working without needing to log in earlier. Let's see, so here we go. So here's the Facebook and Education picture. And as you can see, I'm just on my Facebook page there. If you scroll down along the Facebook and Education, you can see there's Inspired Ed. What is that? Povi, not one I'm familiar with. There's a video that's been shared. And so this is really just a place for teachers to connect and share in terms of what they're doing on social media, what's working on social media, what's not working on social media. So if you're considering Facebook in your classroom, I do consider that Facebook in Education link right there. And this presentation will be posted to nmdelt.org, so you can get copies of all these slides off of there, and you can get direct links to all of my resources. This is also the Social Media and Education Resource Toolkit. For the sake of time, I'm not going to click on that today. But again, just be aware you can get this from our website, nmdelt.org. So how is social media being used in education? Some instructors are doing virtual office hours. So instructor availability via IM, that's instant messaging. That's where you may want to answer students' questions individually. Keeping in mind, there may be some better options out there in terms of the learning management system. There again, Blackboard Learn, if you have access to that. Google Classroom can be a more secure way of doing instant messaging. That allows your students to chat with you in real time. Posting notes and homework assignments for students that miss class. That can really stop the emails in terms of, hey, what did I miss today? I was gone today, what did I miss? Well, they have a place to go and see what they miss. You can bring in guest speakers. From what I've read on the web, people are surprisingly receptive to that. I think it's hard to get a guest speaker into your classroom because that's a pretty big commitment. The person's gonna have to drive all the way to your school, find parking, walk to your classroom, give their speech, walk back to their car, drive back to wherever they were going. Whereas a guest speaker via social media, they may just have to click, log on, talk for 5 or 10 minutes, click off. So I think people are more willing to do that, is what I've read. You can also find guest speakers on sites such as YouTube, where you can show a speech in class, sort of in the way that I'm showing the In Plain English videos in our webinar today. You can also do online polls. Online polls can be very nice as well. You can make the polls to where you can see what student is giving you what feedback. You can make the polls anonymous if you just want to get some general information about your class. See what's working, what do they like, what do they not like. Again, social media can be a nice way of doing this, though social media is not the only means of doing an online poll. From what I understand, Poll Everywhere is a very good resource for polls. CiteMe, EasyBib, other citation tools. There are some wonderful things out there to help students learn proper writing style and to learn how to cite their sources. EasyBib in particular is one I've used before that I highly recommend. You can have your students research their target occupation, company, or school. Maybe get them on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS.gov, and see, okay, if this is your goal, what's it going to be like when you're actually in there? By having students focus on their goals, that tends to motivate them more in the short term, motivate them more to do things in your class. So we're also going to look at blogs in education. I have up there blogger.com, worldpress.com. Those are just some free websites where you can set up your own blog. And then some colleges and universities, and I don't know, possibly some of the HSE programs as well, might offer blogs hosted on their own servers. So let's go ahead and hit blogs in plain English.
You've seen the word, you've seen the websites, and you may even have one. But have you ever wondered, what's the big deal about blogs? This is Blogs in Plain English. To make sense of blogs, you have to think about the news and who makes it. We'll look at news in the 20th century versus the 21st century to make our point. In the 20th century, the news was produced professionally. When news happened, reporters wrote the stories and a tiny group of people decided what appeared in a newspaper or broadcast. Professional news was mainstream, general, and limited. The 21st century marked the point where news became both professional and personal. A new kind of website called a weblog, or blog for short, came onto the scene that let anyone be a reporter and publisher, often for free. As blogs became popular, they created millions of news sources that gave everyone an audience for their own version of news. Of course, we're using the word news loosely, but really, isn't everything news to someone? With a blog, a business owner can share news about his business. A mother can share news about her family, or a sports star can share news with fans. These people are all bloggers. How did this happen? Well, blogs made sharing news on the web easy. Anyone with an idea can start a new blog with the click of a button and share news minutes later. Here's how blogs work. Blogs are websites that are organized by blog posts. These are individual news stories, like articles in the paper. Bloggers simply fill out a form like this one to post a news story. With the click of a button, the blog post appears at the top of the web page, just above yesterday's news. Over time, the blog becomes a collection of these posts, all archived for easy reference. Also, each blog post can become a discussion through comments left by readers. Blogs make the news a two-way street. But really, the fuss is not about how blogs work. It's about what people like you do with them that matters. Let's say you have a blog about green living and outdoor photography. It reflects your unique perspective. This helps you build relationships with your readers and other bloggers with similar interests. Speaking of relationships, bloggers often work together. In addition to comments, you'll read each other's posts, quote each other, and link your blogs together. This creates communities of bloggers that inspire and motivate each other. Whether it's their ease of use or the opportunities they offer, blogs have been adopted in a very big way. Since 2003, there have been over 70 million blogs created, each with its own version of news. So the big deal about blogs is that they gave people like you the power of the media and created a personal kind of news that appeals to a high number of small audiences. So it's up to you. What will you do with this new power? There is likely a group of people out there who want to hear what you have to say. You can search for blogs using Google's blog search or Technorati. You can also start your own blog for free at Blogger or WordPress.com. I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Blogs in Plain English on the Common Craft Show.
All right, so there's blogs. It's essentially the idea of if you have something to say, how can you get it out there? A blog is a great way to get it out there, and they're also something that are being used in the classroom. So here I have this link here, Blogs in the Classroom. Same thing as with Facebook. This will be posted to our website, nmdelt.org. This just gives all kinds of resources about how blogs are being used in the classroom. You can see what other teachers are doing with them, and just lots of great ideas. Here we have published assignments, published resources, keeping people up to date on class events, sort of like you do with social networking sites. You can master content writing skills. You can have students publish their writing. That can be quite an accomplishment for some students, even if nobody's necessarily going to read it, just to know that something they've done is going to be out there. And so this website has some videos. So I highly suggest that you check this out if you have time. And then they have their 11 tips for when they're using blogs in the classroom. So this slide here, how are blogs used in the classroom? From what I understand, live blogging a conference or a lecture can be an excellent teaching tool. So for example, we just had NMEA this past weekend. If you, for example, attended a conference at NMEA that you think would be beneficial to your students, maybe blog about it. Write sort of, instead of writing notes by pen and paper, make your notes go live on your blogs and your students can follow along with you. From what I understand, you can get a pretty high degree of student buy-in by sharing something that you're choosing to attend with your students. It can showcase student projects. Again, don't underestimate the motivating power that putting your work out there can have on a student. They say, okay, this is going to be for people to actually see. They're hopefully going to work just a little bit harder on that. Providing assignment and due dates, by all means, it sort of goes back to the argument that I made earlier. These are things that students are probably going to check more frequently than email. Can also be really nice for group projects. Group projects can be challenging in distance learning. The blog could be a place where maybe you have a group blog and each person can kind of contribute to what they're working as they go. One nice thing about that as a teacher, you can also see who's been doing the work and who hasn't. A lot of times in groups, you get the one really clever student that does all the work for everybody, along with a whole bunch of slackers. This could be a way as a teacher to monitor and make sure that everyone is actually contributing. Twitter. Let's look at what Twitter is, and then I will show you this link of 100 ways that's used in education. And don't forget, you can follow NM-DELT's Twitter.
So, what are you doing? It's one of the first questions we often ask friends and family. Even if the answer is just mowing the lawn or cooking dinner, it's interesting to us. It makes us feel connected and a part of each other's lives. Unfortunately, most of our day-to-day lives are hidden from people that care. Of course, we have email and blogs and phones to keep us connected, but you wouldn't send an email to a friend to tell them you're having coffee. Your friend doesn't need to know that. But what about people that want to know about the little things that happen in your life? Real life happens between blog posts and emails, and now there's a way to share. This is Twitter in plain English. Thanks to Twitter, it's possible to share short, bite-sized updates about your life and follow the updates of people that matter to you via the web. Here's how it works. Meet Carla. She's addicted to her mobile phone, reads blogs every day, and has contacts all over the world. She heard about Twitter and was skeptical. After some of her friends couldn't stop talking about it, she gave it a try. She signed up for free and saw that Twitter pages look a little like blogs with very short posts. Each page is personal and has updates from friends. She got started by looking up her friends on Twitter.com. After finding a few, she clicked follow to start seeing their updates on her Twitter page. Within hours, she began to see a different side of people she chose to follow. She didn't know that Steven in Seattle was a baseball fan, or that Julia in London was reading a new investment book. The little messages from Twitter painted a picture of her friends, family, and coworkers that she'd never seen before. It was the real world. Soon, she became a fan of Twitter and posted updates every day. Her friends followed her updates and learned that she recently discovered a passion for Van Halen. They could see Carla's life between blog posts and emails. For Carla, Twitter worked because it was simple. The updates were always short, under 140 characters. Plus, she could post updates and follow her friends using the Twitter website, software on her browser, a mobile phone, or instant messages. By asking members to answer the question, "What are you doing?" Carla found that Twitter brought her closer to people that matter to her, 140 characters at a time. Find out what your friends are doing at twitter.com. I'm Leela Fever, and this has been Twitter in plain English on the Common Craft Show.
So I do want to take a second real quick just to remind you what I said earlier about I do suggest if you're going to do social media in your classroom that you have separate accounts for your professional life and a separate account for your personal life. For example, what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. I think my great aunt in Amarillo, Texas would love to know if I enjoy my dinner at El Patio tonight. I don't think my students so much care whether or not I enjoy my dinner at El Patio tonight. And quite frankly, I don't think I want my students knowing where I'm going to eat. I'm not completely comfortable with that. So again, keep in mind that idea of keeping those things separately. Here I have 100 ways to use Twitter in education. This is a really wonderful article. It'll be posted with this presentation on the NM-DELT account, and notice they have it broken down into sort of clumps. Here they have the basics. That's one of the headings. There's etiquette that they talk about, very important thing to teach your students. Here's some ways that you can connect with your students and get them engaged. Here's specifically some techniques you can do in the classroom. This is what can you actually do with Twitter in the classroom. Here's some ideas of how you can develop your professional life through Twitter, and also how you can teach your students to start establishing and developing a professional life on Twitter. And then they have some more advanced tools. Who to follow, we will look at shortly in the presentation as we continue back to that. You also, it can be nice to get out there and look for things to emulate. So sort of looking at what are other teachers doing on Twitter and sort of doing similar to what they are. Maybe even in some cases, if you really like what they're doing, just flat out ask, hey, can I use the system that you've created here on social media? So there's just some ways to use Twitter. So some things I wanted to highlight. It can be really nice to follow certain people. I really like to follow people that I admire, maybe other math teachers that I admire. I follow a couple of my old professors that have really excellent Twitters. They'll share articles about some latest research in education, that kind of thing. Famous people can be interesting to follow sometimes. Sharing interesting websites and multimedia. A website that I use a fair bit is Mental Floss. They have a lot of just random facts and information. They throw a lot of just random, interesting mathematical facts on there. They like to share with my students as well. So that's one way you can use Twitter. Interestingly, Lock Haven University did a study about a positive correlation between Twitter in the classroom and student achievement. And I have included a link to that study on my resource page here. But essentially what they have noticed is classes that use Twitter tend to have a 0.5 GPA advantage overall, and they're seeing that pretty consistently. So interestingly, there is a correlation between Twitter and student achievement in the classroom. So who do you follow on Twitter? Colleges and universities are interesting to follow on Twitter. UNM's Twitter I enjoy quite a bit, so UNM is one I would suggest. Your professional organizations, maybe if you're a member of a teaching organization, a teachers union, something like that, those can be very nice to follow. NM-DELT is a professional organization I highly suggest that you follow. Authors can be very fascinating to follow. They may share research that they come across as they're working on their latest work. They may share snippets of their work for free. They have lots of interesting perspectives. It can be nice to follow your fellow academics. You know, just like there are advantages to creating networks of students within your classes, there can be advantages to creating networks of other teachers that are in the same or similar fields as you. You can follow academic journals. They share lots of really interesting articles and things for free, lots of interesting studies for free on there. If you have a mentor you'd like to follow, I still follow my Algebra 2 teacher from back in high school. You can follow career resources, whether you're looking to expand your own career or whether you're doing this to help your students and just be aware of what career resources are out there for when they get into the job market. Libraries can be great to follow. They have all kinds of interesting resources and information. Museums, and keep in mind, you're not just limited by the museums and libraries in your local town. You're not limited to the libraries and museums in the state. You're not even limited to the ones in the country. If there's a museum you've always wanted to visit, maybe that's a good one to follow. Research facilities can be wonderful to follow. They share all kinds of great things. You also can search for lists within Twitter. You might search for a list of teaching resources, or you might search for a list of ABE resources. And just be aware there's a lot out there. This can very much be a tool for developing you as a professional. It can also be a colossal time waster, depending on what you choose to follow. So Vine is actually an app within Twitter. It creates very short 6-second videos. So sort of like Twitter is very short little statements, 140 characters or less. Vine is very short videos integrating different concepts. There are these things called Vine loops, and that's where there's just a whole bunch of these 6-second Vine videos pieced together. Those can be really cool for the classroom, both to show your students things that other people have done, and also it can be something nice to have your students create. So here is the In Plain English overview of Vine. And excuse me, I'm sorry, this isn't the In Plain English. This is an example of how Vine videos can be looped together.
Hey guys, first we take a balloon, then we rub it in our hair, and we can make water move. Science time. Big volcano, baking soda, vinegar. Oh, so, get out of here!
So here's an example of a Vine loop. It can be very fun to have your students create those. Here is a link down here that's 20 ways that you can use Twitter's Vine application in education. And notice the URL up here. This is actually from a blog. And so again, I find that blogs can be very, very useful. So here are just some cool examples. I think teasing new units sort of get the students thinking ahead of what they're going to be working with then. You know, the little trailers, do really quick solutions to math problems. If you want to do a quote really quick, just quite a bit you can do with that, but keeping in mind that limits you to 6 seconds. And you can make videos that are more than 6 seconds long. Those might be better to do on things like YouTube. Those might be better to do in things like Google Classroom. So don't feel limited by what's offered today. So a few things I wanted to highlight here were, you know, I've seen people use some cool things related to group project videos where you create the Vine loop sort of what we've just seen. Maybe each member of the group records 6 seconds and that's pieced together to create the overall project. You can have your really quick instructor demonstrations. Again, it would have to be very, very fast to make it in 6 seconds. Really fast class reminders. Keep in mind we want to keep the human aspect in distance learning. This is something where they can actually see your face, they can see your nonverbals. Your class can see, hey, this is an actual living, breathing person. Do class brainstorming. Maybe the students just throw their ideas out there really quickly. Announcements to students and parents. Again, that's pretty well a useful tool for any of these social media, varying types of social media. You can do modeling on there, a quick video, solutions to problems. If you just want to share answers really quick, do quick instructions for technology tools. For example, if a student can't figure out how to log into Play-Doh, you could record a very quick video showing them how. Let's look at wikis.
These 4 friends are going on a camping trip. They need to bring the right supplies because they're backpacking. The group needs to plan and plan well, so coordination is key. They're all computer users, so they start planning with an email. It starts with one, but then becomes a barrage. Email is not good at coordinating and organizing a group's input. This is the old way. Boo! The important information is scattered across everyone's inbox. This isn't coordination. Let's start over. There is a better way. It requires you using a website called a wiki. Using a wiki, the group can coordinate their trip better. This is the new way. Yay! Most wikis work the same. They make it easy for everyone to change what appears on a web page with the click of a button. It's as easy as erasing a word and rewriting it. The buttons are really important. There are two that are essential. They are edit and save, and they are always used together. Let's see them in action. Here are our camping friends, and this is a wiki website. Like all wikis, it has an edit button. Clicking this button transforms the web page into a document. All you have to do is click it, and the web page becomes a document ready for editing. Editing the page means you can add or remove words or change how they look, just like writing a letter. Once you're finished editing, you click save, and the document becomes a web page once again and is ready for the next person to edit it. Easy. Edit, write, and save. Using this process, a group can coordinate more easily. Let's apply this to our camping friends who need to bring the right supplies. Mary signs up for a wiki site and then sees the new site for the first time. She clicks the edit button to get started. She creates two lists for camping, what we have and what we need. Under we have, she lists the things she will bring: cooler, stove, and flashlight. Under we need, she lists items that others need to bring: compass, lighter, water, and food. She finishes the process by clicking save, and the website now has lists for the camping trip. Now it's John's turn. John visits the wiki website, clicks edit, and the page becomes a document ready for him to make changes. John volunteers to bring food and water, so he moves those to the have column. He also realizes the group will need a knife and rope. Once he's finished, he clicks save, and the wiki is ready for the next person. Henry visits the wiki, clicks edit, and he can edit the page. He remembers they need a tent. Henry saves the page, and the wiki is ready for Frank. Frank edits the page and agrees to bring the remaining items, completing the process. Frank saves the page and realizes something awesome. The group has created the perfect camping list without email. Yay! But wait, one thing is missing. They need a location for the campsite. The wiki can help with this too, but another page is needed. John visits the wiki and clicks edit to edit the page. He types in the word locations and highlights it. He then clicks the link button. This changes the word locations into a link to a new page. John clicks save, and next, Frank visits the wiki and sees the list and the link to the new page. He clicks on the locations link and arrives at the new page. This new page enables the group to use the same edit, write, save process to coordinate locations. This process can be repeated over and over. These three buttons, edit, save, and link, make it possible to organize a great camping trip or create the world's biggest encyclopedia. You can sign up for your own wiki at these websites: PBWiki, WebPaint, or Wikispaces. I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Wikis in Plain English on the Common Craft Show.
So here again, I have a link to how wikis are used in education. For the sake of time, I am not going to click on that. Just be aware you can access that through the DELT website. Big advantage of wiki is emails can get kind of messy. They can start piling up. They can get lost. The wiki has it all in one place that everyone can access. Let's see. So some ways wikis are used in education: file sharing for your students, peer editing. Though in my experience, students are quite hesitant to edit another student's work and then save it. Group projects, sort of what was just demonstrated related to the camping trip, can be another option for students to publish work that they are proud of. Although be aware, somebody may be a jerk and edit their work if you go that route. Blogs might be a better place for publishing, and then collaborate among other schools and classes if you need sort of that working document going on there. So here is just a quick summary of the pros and cons as I see them related to the integration of social media. On the good side, you have communication, you have marketing, you can engage remote students. It's embracing the culture shift that's happening. It's creating a more human connection, and you're getting your students ready for the job market in the real world. On the downside, though, we did talk about the privacy concerns, academic integrity, boundaries that can arise, peer influences, distractions, and the concept that a lot of your students are going to be, social media will be very foreign time, so that could create a problem. Some rookie mistakes I just want to warn you about. Please be careful that your private conversations stay private. Let learners know when you're going to join a chat or a conference. You don't want to be kind of lurking invisibly in the background. That's going to make it more difficult for your students to trust you. Respond in a timely manner. I suggest that you have a response time defined from the beginning of the class. My policy is I will respond to messages within 24 hours Monday through Friday, 48 hours Saturday and Sunday. You also want to establish a netiquette policy in terms of manners, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, as you would want to do in any online class. You want to speak with your students about their online reputation, that online persona, and just be aware you probably are going to make rookie mistakes. Just like with your students, that's how you learn sometimes. And again, keep your private and your public social media accounts separately. Here are the list of resources that are referred to throughout this. These will be on the NM Delt website. And then here are the videos that I showed during the training. I would typically offer time for questions right now, but I don't believe we have anybody live with us. We only have people that are watching. So I will go ahead and conclude today's webinar. So thank you for attending. And again, there's our website. I encourage you to like us on Facebook and Twitter. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.